There are hundreds of castles in England, and even more if you bring in Scotland and Wales. There are grand castles, there are houses dressed up as castles, and there are castles like this, which Acton Burnell is hidden away by the edge of a school just outside of Acton Burnell, a small village. At first sight, it's a manor house, not even a castle. The only thing that tells you it's a castle is the castellations, the little ridges along the roof. You had to get permission from the king to have your house castellated, so it generally meant that you'd done something of merit, you needed to protect your house because it was near the coast or something along those lines. But here, it's because someone very important lived here. This castle was built by Robert Burnell, who was Bishop of Bath and Wells, but he was also a very good friend and advisor to King Edward I. And he did begin as a manor house. It was built in 1284, but it was castellated under royal licence, or crenellated is the actual word, to fortify it in 1284. And this was only something very trusted people were allowed to do. The castle itself is a rectangular building with 4 towers at the corners. It's quite basic, but not insubstantial. It had 3 floors. There was a hall, a solar, bedrooms, a chapel of its own, a kitchen. And Robert Burnell also built the Church of St. Mary just around the corner. In 1283, Edward I is supposed to have held the first Parliament with the Commons at Acton Burnell, probably in the Great Barn, which is in the field next to it. You can just see the ends, there's nothing else left. So that's the first time in English history that the Commons were involved in making laws, and they passed the Statute of Acton Burnell, law giving protection to creditors. This is the basis of how a creditor can claim money. So you can seize assets. And there's the barn. That's where Parliament sat with the Commons. Now it sits inside the grounds of a school, which I assume is quite a nice private school. But I got here at sunset. It's a very small castle, but it's striking. And you know that something happened here. I didn't know about the Commons, but the bishop was a very wealthy man. It's rumoured that he would have been Archbishop of Canterbury. Because he was a bishop who was also very close to the king, Rome would have loved that. But sadly for him, his illegitimate children were a problem. Well, now it's just a shell. You can see the first floor windows, you can see the towers are still intact, the grand hall, the entrance. You can see where it's been bricked up on the other side, so it would have been a through and through almost. And it's striking. It's a beautiful structure, completely silent, there's nobody about. It's not Dover Castle with its big crowds. It's just a small castle hidden away, not even in a field, in a corner by some trees at the end of a muddy lane. When the bishop died in 1292, it was passed down through his family, but under Henry VII, the Battle of Stoke Field at the end of the War of the Roses, the castle was taken and it was given away. After the Norman invasion, the Norman kings seized land from Anglo-Saxon lords and gave it to knights and friends, and castles, their surrounding land, and just having crenellations was used as a way of enforcing dominance and power. There was never a huge number of Normans in the UK, but they ran a church and they ran a nobility. And between those, they controlled every office of state. And normally a castle is near an obvious point. I think of Berkhamsted Castle or Rochester Castle, which were built to protect key routes across the country. And despite appearance, Acton Burnell was put here for a reason. It was very near to the old Watling Street, so it was a way of controlling commerce and a way of controlling locals, and also of keeping on side those who were friendly with the king. The king couldn't have soldiers in every town, but he could have loyal subjects who were allowed to have houses like this, and all the better as senior priests. This is interesting to me because it's how the Normans enforced their rule for hundreds of years whilst being a minority. So it may not be as impressive as Chepstow, as old as Pevensey, as huge as Dover, as famous as the Tower of London, but I hope you enjoyed this very brief visit to a tiny little island of history hidden in the hills in Shropshire. And do subscribe and come back for more. I'm sure we'll be talking next week about somewhere more famous. But hopefully, I think Acton Burnell's interesting.